Well, it's I'm going to stick to my 80%, but the range I'm going to give you is a range that's genetically determined. So there's two components to this whole genetic thing. One is the actual recipe for a healthy human being that resides in us. Our genes are on-off switches that direct the manufacture of proteins that then are involved in metabolism and muscle creation and fat burning and so on and so forth. And all of these metabolic processes work the same way in every person, barring a few very, very rare genetic defects. But all of these genetic things work the same way. It's just the degree to which they work in different people, and that's what we inherit from our parents. So our familial genes basically give us a range of possible outcomes. Based on our family history, we may not ever be 6'6" tall. It's just not in the cards. But we probably have a range of heights that we could achieve that could be from 5'7" to 5'11". And depending on how we influence those genes over the course of our development determines how we maximize or how we finally express those genes. So that's kind of when it comes to weight, there are some people who, with adopting a low carb strategy like we suggest in the Primal Blueprint, they can pretty much effortlessly get down to what I would call an optimum body composition. But that's optimum for them. And it may be, if you're a man, it may be 16%. And you may get to a point where it's really difficult to get below 16% without upping the ante significantly. But I would argue that if that's your family history, then 16%, which isn't bad, is a healthy range for you. That's an optimum range where you will probably live the longest, maintain that weight effortlessly, provided you eat right and do some exercise, not have to agonize about and obsess about the washboard abs or the, looking good at the beach or whatever this thing. And that's what I mean by range of outcomes. And that's where I still say that 80% of your body composition is determined by how you eat. And then the other 20% is determined by other lifestyle factors. Do you get enough sleep? Are you getting some sun exposure? So are you otherwise interfering with optimal health because you're not getting enough vitamin D, or you're not sleeping and you're secreting too much cortisol? So those do factor in. And then ultimately, that maybe it's only that last 5% that's what I would call intense exercise. If you want to squeeze out the last performance bits, then you really have to up the ante. But I'm suggesting that unless you've identified a real goal and a real kind of, if you've gotten to what your why is, why am I doing this? Unless you've identified that, then why would you even obsess about it? Aren't we all after a lean, fit, happy, healthy body with the least amount of input possible?
If someone's goal and why was to maximize their longevity, and not only the number of years but the quality of the years, what would be your recommendation of a range of lean body mass for a man and a woman to achieve? And then secondarily, I would imagine there's a bit of customization, individualization that occurs as to how you would recommend they identify that for their specific individualized one.
Yeah, again, you're right. There is the range, and it is individualized, and so it's kind of a wide range, because there are some people who come from corpulent, familial genes who, if they ever get down to if they get down to 16, 17, 18%, are going to be the healthiest they're ever going to be, and for them to get down to 11% or 10%, might actually have a deleterious effect on longevity. And on risk factors for certain types of long-term chronic diseases, maybe even cancer being one of those. So at some point, to get below a certain body fat has a cost. Just like I've always said, at some point, getting fit to become a performance beast, you sort of, the lines between fitness and health get crossed, and all of a sudden, the fitter you get, the less healthy you become in order to pursue your sort of narrow-minded fitness goal. So it's kind of a nebulous response here, but I just want to be sure that we understand that there are ranges of outcomes for everybody, and they depend on who you are. And at some point, it may not be worth aggressively going after a low body fat. If you're eating right, if you feel good, if you don't get sick very often, if you're not depressed, maybe you are at your ideal body composition, and the cover of Shape magazine be damned.
Okay, well, that's an interesting perspective, and I thank you for sharing that. Now, as a confirmation, anecdotal confirmation of some of the things you're discussing, I suspect you ran with these individuals because you were an elite athlete, and Joan Benoit, who won I think you participated in Olympic trials for that, your 1980 Olympics marathon for the women, and so she was definitely in your.
She's
you were
in
running
my genre, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she the reason I'm bringing her up, and then Greta Waitz, who was also about the same time, both world-class marathoners, but now, these women were some of the most cardiovascularly fit women that existed in 1980 on the planet, no question. I don't think anyone would argue that. But now, in their mid-50s, all you have to do is look at their face, and you can see dramatic evidence of how participating in that type of level of fitness or exercise really appears to have caused some damage.
Oh, absolutely.
It looks like they smoked for 30 years.
No, and I mean nothing. This is oxidative damage at its highest level, because your metabolic rate is 15 to 20 times resting rate. So your throughput of oxygen, and I have to say that a lot of it has to do with glycation and the consumption of excess amounts of sugar and carbohydrate that are required to fuel that level of full-on high performance. At some point, I'm a big advocate of a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet, but if you want to be a world-class competitive athlete, you gotta. You have to make that pact with the devil, and you have to go back to eating lots of carbohydrates. I haven't seen anybody do it yet on a low carb, high fat program. But Greta Waitz, she died a couple of weeks ago.
She did?
Yeah, cancer finally took her.
I did not know that.
57. But it sounds a little morbid, but I keep a registry of all of my friends who were either world class athletes, who were, record holders, gold medal winners, champions in one shape. I've got 35 or 40 of them that have either died before the age of 50 or have had pacemakers implanted or defibrillators implanted. People think, wow, when you're an endurance athlete, you're one of the fittest people on the planet. Well, the fact that you can race fast doesn't mean that you're healthy. And I've seen, world-class. One of the winners of the Ironman, Greg Welch, he had his first open heart surgery at 37 years old and has had 11 of them. Alberto Salazar, who's a friend of mine.
Sure.
Alberto basically died of a heart attack at the age of 48. Now, he was resuscitated with a defibrillator, brought back to life, died 3 more times on the way to the hospital. He's alive today and he's well, and I'm, wish him all the best. But here's a guy who was America's #1 runner who basically dropped dead of a heart attack. And I've got 30 more of them, Joe, and it's not a pretty picture. So when we look at the long-term effects of high-intensity running and endurance training, we have to take into account that this is not what the human body was designed to do. Human body did not evolve to be able to do that amount of output on a consistent, regular basis. And the only thing that's made it possible is, and I know it's one of your favorites, is grains. The advent of cheap sources of calories that readily convert into glucose, only coming on the scene 10,000 years ago, is the only way that we've been able to, do this, be able to artificially get out there, reload glycogen stores every single day, and go out and do it again and hammer it hard tomorrow. And it's a bizarre, if you kind of distill it to its common, its basic elements. Why are we doing this? I'm a veteran of 200 contests, from the mile, 2 mile, 5K, 10K marathon, triathlon, and so on. And I just had an epiphany a few years ago. As an elite athlete, there is no point from the time the gun goes off until you cross the finish line when you can actually say, wow, I'm having fun. You with me on that?
Oh, I've been there. I totally been there.
It can be.
It's pain. It's pain.
It can be, and by the way, you can have great moments where you're saying, oh, I'm ahead of the pack. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm in the zone. And that's, there's a sense of satisfaction in that, but there is no sense of fun, believe me. Now, on the other hand, if you watch some of the NBA players and you see them, they're having, even though they're working hard, they're having fun during their games.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's one of, and so when we look at training for endurance and the Ironman and the these ultra runners and marathoners, I have to ask, really, what is it that's motivating you? Why are you doing this? Because it certainly isn't for fun, and it is certainly been proven to not be part of a legitimate anti-aging campaign. I mean, it cracks me up to see 40, 45-year-old guys start their triathlon training with the idea that it's part of an anti-aging strategy. Nothing ages you faster than that kind of training.
Yes, well, thank you again for sharing that, because, this is certainly not a wide number of people, large number of people that are seeking to compete at that level. But I think just the fact that these competitive athletes exist and are viewed upon as sort of the goal or the target or the paragon of excellence is that, and really something we should seek to emulate, sort of acts as a general level of discouragement for the typical person seeking to participate in an exercise program. Now, maybe some people are smarter than that, but I know that would have been my view, and I suspect many other people share that. So to hear your perspective coming from on that position, I think is really empowering and liberating again to people, and to know that they don't have to work out this hard. In fact, if they do, they are actually hurting themselves rather than helping themselves.